In this lesson, we'll learn how to select objects, mirror them, and use existing geometry to model an arced wall and how to change the visibility of your view. Revit has the basic drafting functionality you would expect to see: mirror, copy, move, rotate, and so on. The objective here is to practice workflow. We're going to mirror two walls to allow us to keep modeling. Once we have the items mirrored, this will allow us to continue to fill in the gaps with a radial wall. This exercise will focus on the object selection process, the process for mirroring, and to practice moving ahead with modeling a radial wall based on 3 points. Open the file you've been working on, or open the file called Chapter 2 and follow along. If you look at my example, this is what it's going to look like when we're done. Once your file is open, let's take a look at some of the selection processes. The objective is to select these two walls and mirror them down so they form an L shape down here mirrored from this. We're going to use the midpoint on this wall as the line. But first, we have to learn how to select objects. So let me explain that a bit to you. In Revit, there's 3 ways to select an item. There's a pick box, there's a crossing window, and there's just physically picking items. Let's take a look at the 3 now. The first one we'll look at is the box. With the box, if I come across here, you'll see that once I touch that wall, it doesn't get picked up. But when I come down to this wall, it does. The deal is, you need to have the entire object ensconced within that box, or it won't be selected. And if I come this way, that item will be selected. Now, if I take a window coming from this side, we'll see that the second Revit touches it, it becomes selected. That means that this wall will be part of that selection set. A third way to select items in Revit is just to physically pick them. But what will happen when you physically pick an item is if I come over here and pick this one becomes deselected. That's where you can use either the Control key or the Shift key. For example, if I want to select both these walls by using the pick method, I can select the first wall, hold down the Control key, then select the second wall. This gets both my walls selected. What I want you to do is select these 2 walls any way you want. Just make sure you don't select the top wall. If you do, all you have to do is hit the Shift key, deselect it. The next step is to mirror these walls down. Before we do that, I'd like to draw your attention to the tab. The Modify Walls tab is a temporary tab that showed up when we selected these walls. In Revit, not only when you start a command, but when you select an item, you get a temporary tab to work on that item. I'm going to zoom out a little bit, and I'm going to go to the Modify panel on the Modify Walls tab and look at all the drafting tools we have. There's 2 ways to mirror an item. We're going to use one of them now. That's Mirror, Draw, Axis. Notice, too, that DM is in parentheses. That means that's a shortcut. So if you wanted to mirror an item, you'd select them first. It'll make these commands available. Then you type DM and you can mirror it. Know that in Revit, you always select the object first, then execute the command second. Now, pick the Mirror Draw Axis button. And what I want to do is come to this wall, and right when we get to the midpoint, you'll see that little triangle show up. Once you see the triangle show up and the text midpoint shows up, pick that point, move your cursor straight in this direction. Be careful not to angle it. Straight in that direction. When you see that snap tip show up and when you see that reference plane show up, come in this direction. You can pick a point anywhere in this direction and it's going to mirror the wall. Hit escape a couple times and it clears out the command. Zoom in on the bottom wall and notice that Revit joins the geometry. This brings up another great point. The problem is, they don't look very well, do they? We selected this complex wall and we went through and looked at all these awesome properties, but we're seeing this in our plan. That's not acceptable. The thing is, we have what's called the View Control toolbar. This toolbar controls the view state of the objects in the view window. What I want to do is hover over this icon here. It says Detail Level, Coarse. If you click that icon and go to Detail Level, Fine, what you'll see is all the other sublines show up, delineating the wall's functionality. In some cases, where the scale is really small, it's handy to have your detail level set to coarse. That way it doesn't look like a blob when you print it. On normal scale, such as 1/8 of an inch, it's okay to have your detail level set to fine. Also know that if you have a lot of objects modeled and your detail level is set for fine, it could slow your model down a bit. The next thing we're going to do is create a radial wall. I'm going to zoom out to see my entire wall. If you type ZA, you can zoom all. Or if you hold your wheel button down, you can pan. If you wheel your middle button in or out, you zoom in or out. What I'd like to do is zoom in on this wall and take a look at it really quick. what we're going to do is we're going to draw another wall from this endpoint here down to this endpoint here. So to do that, the best way I find is you can just right-click on any wall that's there and create similar. Revit allows you to build on existing geometry. It makes it so much easier to select the right types of walls. The next thing I want to do is on the Draw panel of the Modify Place Wall tab, I want to click on the Start End Radius Arc button. I'm going to zoom in on this wall as close as I can by wheeling in with my mouse button. And I'm going to click this endpoint. This is actually a concrete ledge that's about 3'6" up the wall. We don't want to select that. This is the actual edge of brick. This is the wall we're going to select. So pick this point right here. Zoom out down to the bottom and pick the exact opposite corner. Not this corner, but this corner. Once you pick that, you'll see that the wall is starting to form an arc. Once we move in this direction, the wall will actually snap into place. We can break through it, but let's not do that. Let's just let the wall snap into place. Once you see that it's tangent upon those 2 points, pick it and hit Escape twice. On your keyboard, type ZA. That will zoom all. So that wasn't too difficult, right? Now we know how to select objects in Revit, mirror them, and adjust how the view looks.